Hello, welcome to Gaku Styling. I'm Micah, and let's talk about true seasons. Colors are a spectrum, and because of that, some color analysis systems tend to get simplified or get even more complex. Some people only work with 4 seasons, and others work with as many as 16. Probably some people work with even more. The most popular one is the 12 color seasons model. We have spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And for each one of them, there are 3 categories, one of them being the true or respective temperature season. For the springs, we have clear spring, true spring or warm spring, and light spring. Then we have the summers, light summer, true or cool summer, and then soft summer. Then we have the autumns, soft autumn, true or warm autumn, and then dark autumn. And finally, we have the winters, dark winter, true or cool winter, and then clear winter. If you have followed me for a while, then you probably noticed that I do not work with 12 seasons, I work with 8. And this video is more or less about why. As a little background story, I guess, I developed my own system for dark skin because I had a really hard time understanding how I could use the color systems on myself when I was in fashion school, so this is why I made this. Color is a spectrum, and when I was working on this system, it was a lot easier for me to work with sliders instead of using multiple categories. It was a way for me to simplify it for myself when I'm working. And also, most people tend to lean more towards one of the sides. If it's about simplification, then why not just go for 4 seasons instead? Well, that's because I think the differences between the 2 extremes of the seasonal families are way too much to group them into a single group. And if I used those scales or sliders that I just mentioned, then the variation would just change drastically. Okay, so now the question would be, if there are so many differences between the 2 extremes, why get rid of the in-between season if they are also different? First is that in most cases, the in-between season is called true or its respective temperature season. For example, true or warm autumn. The thing is that with that one, even if you call it true autumn, what it implies is that everyone that's a true season will be completely warm or completely cool, removing being neutral as an option, which can be very limiting. This is where the 16 seasons color systems come in. In there, the true type is actually an in-between seasons season, sometimes called pure or absolute. And then you also have the cool or warm type of that season. This method is not as widely popular as other methods. So if you consider yourself a true type, if you look for information about true types, you're probably going to end up looking at warm spring or cool winter information and feel like that's not something that applies to you. Let's use Beyoncé as an example. Technically, she would be a true season in the sense that she is between dark autumn and soft autumn. Dark autumn colors are way too dark and too harsh, and soft autumn colors are too muted. That would place her as an in-between season that would technically be the true type. But the thing is that she has a neutral undertone, and she uses a neutral warm foundation. Warm colors do look good, but some others can be way too warm for her and end up graying her out. And if you compare her to her sister Solange, you can definitely see the differences between someone that's in between and someone that is an actual dark type. That brings me to my next point. What if instead of having a true season, I had transitional seasons? And that could be a solution, and I might end up doing that at some point, but not right now. I don't want the color seasons to get even harder to understand. I didn't create the color season system as a whole, but the one that I talk about in my videos is something that I made, so it's in my brain and it's it's a lot easier for me to understand it in certain ways, and I don't know how that translates to other people. So I don't know, I think splitting it even more can be harder. I don't know. By the way, if you're not tired of my rambling, but this is way too complicated, very time consuming, you can hire me as your personal stylist at cocostyling.com, and I'll be happy to make you a custom color chart. In the last video, I talked about Kerry Washington and Yara Shahidi, in which I said that they are able to wear colors that are very similar, and if I eventually made a season that's in between clear spring and light spring, both of them would belong to it. My internal conflict right now is that I might end up creating even more categories, since we also have cousin palettes. So that would be people that share the same contrast principle of their respective seasonal families. If it's in my mind, it's very easy to understand for me and it makes a lot of sense. But when I say it out loud and I say it to other people, I do understand how that can be confusing. So what does that mean? Clear spring and dark autumn are cousin palettes because they are the more saturated types of their respective seasonal families. The same goes for clear winter and light summer. Light springs and soft autumns are cousin palettes because they are the more saturated counterparts of their seasonal family. The same goes for dark winter and soft summer. Many of you have the issue of being in between cousin palettes, but a huge detail about them is that not everyone has one. If your main color dimension contradicts what would be your cousin palette, then that wouldn't be your cousin palette. You won't even have one. For example, if you're a saturated dark winter, the colors of the soft summer palette will be way too muted for you. So doing that, if I considered someone that's in between cousin palettes, a whole new type, that would leave us with 3 more branches for the color seasons. The in-between seasonal families true type, the temperature dominant type, and the cousin types. It would look more or less like something like this chart. And I'm sure we can all agree that those are way too many types. I prefer using these sliders. If someone is in between types, I swatch all of the colors on them and see if you have, I don't know, like 80 colors. If you look good in 50 colors from the clear spring palette and then the remaining ones are from the light spring palette, then I would type you as a clear spring, but still the sliders would stay the same if I ended up creating the in-between type. The name of the season might change, but not the colors or the sliders. So that's why I don't think it's very practical. For me, it's way easier to use them, and I have found out that it is also easier to explain it to my clients when we talk about their color palette. The more viable solution would be getting rid of the temperature dominant type and just make colors cooler or warmer, and then work with 16 seasons. But my 16 seasons might differ drastically from other 16 season systems. I'm happy to make a section about exceptions. I will be uploading an official list on my blog micalumsden.com at some point, so do make sure that you sign up to my page. And that would look something like this chart. However, there would be an issue with the light bright or light clear type, because technically it would still be a light summer. Let's remember that light summers can wear brighter colors, but they are not going to be extremely bright, and also their colors won't be too dark. So if a light summer is brighter, then it will be a clear winter. That would be it for today, and it was actually just going to be an answer on the Q&A, but in the end it was way too complex to answer it in less than 1 minute. I hope it helped you clear some of your doubts. If you felt like you were in between seasons, please write down any other questions that you might have for the Q&A. If everything I just said about the color seasons is way too much, you can hire me as your stylist at cocostyling.com. Have a nice day, and I hope to see you soon.